I occurred to me that I hadn't put a drop of gas in my car.
Your microphone's not on.
It turned on.
Oh, it's been turned off.
You're good. I'm good. I don't know about good. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Take the scriptures. Let's open to Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. Chapter 12, verse 1. We will just jump right in. Yesterday I spoke on the thriving organization remembers fondly its beginning. I joked with somebody that this one will be thriving organizations. I'm not going to be so fun to remember this morning. The actual proposition is that thriving organizations run the race faithfully in the present. Hebrews chapter 12, just the one verse, verse 1. Therefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin that doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. Other than Justin, anybody else in here a race fan? Oh, we got a couple. All right, a couple of good rednecks. I'm sorry. Yeah. You don't come get calls to a church down there unless you are. I know. Well, growing up, we were stock car fans, our family. The old days, the old small town stock cars with their track that everybody knows everybody else. It's about a mile from our house. As the crow flies, now crows don't go to races, but if we didn't attend, we could always hear the roar, at least get something out of that. My oldest son just recently became a Formula One race fan. And, do you know those rednecks? No, that's the best. Infected his sons with that same disease. And the last I heard, they were planning an outing in the fall where they're going to go to London just so they can attend I guess that's one of the biggie Formula One outings, just so they can attend that. At least I don't have to pay that ticket. This verse talks about a race that was set before us. We're to be enthusiastic participants in it. Keep our minds on the fact that it is God Himself who set that race. That means there's no backing out. He sets the goals. He makes the rules. He determines the participants, the obstacles, and also the great example. Verse begins with that we're encompassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses. Who are they? They are not the ones who preceded us in death and are up over the ramparts watching. Grandma and Grandpa are not watching what you're doing. I believe that the ones spoken of before in chapter 11. I think that's what we're talking about. The word for witness, of course, is the normal word martyrs. We get our English word from. Those that have fought the battles, carried the burden, earned the right to be honored. When I was in the Navy, I was a hospital corpsman. I went to Corps school after boot camp. The administrative building in San Diego, where I could go, the hallway was lined with photographs and stories, brief stories of hospital corpsmen who through the ages in battles had won the Medal of Honor. There were probably 24 up there. Most got it posthumously, but there were several who were living. Why were they there? What was their purpose? If you've been in the military, you know that the military demands that you spend a certain number of hours each day standing in line, and in the administrative office especially. But you got to read those, you couldn't miss them. And so while you're standing in line, you're looking and you're reading some of the stories of what these men did to earn the Medal of Honor. A good many of us, me included, would eventually be sent to Vietnam. The Navy supplies all the medical personnel for the Marine Corps. So we served as the medical staff for the Marines. And so you wondered, standing there, would you be put into a position where your name and photograph might be on that wall? Now, there were several of us in our core school with me in the class that went. I don't know how many, but I do know that there were several that came back early in a bag. I don't know of any that got the Medal of Honor. There was a Catholic chaplain and a Presbyterian chaplain who were with our unit. The Catholic chaplain chafed at being there. We were basically the field hospital if you were in the Army. If you've ever seen MASH, that's what we were. We got them off the helicopter. It's basically an ER getting them into surgery so we could get them other places. But those photographs were on that wall to inspire, encourage, and to instruct. That's what we were expected to do. If we got the medal or didn't get the medal, that's what we were expected to do. That's what hospital corpsmen do. With these stupid Marines that decide to charge a machine gun with nobody else with them. And then they get wounded, and the first thing they say is, "Corpsman!" And I'm supposed to go out and pick them up and bring them back. I'm not bitter about that, as you can tell. I appreciated the illustration of Spurgeon last night. Heart-rending to see the agony he was enduring with his need to separate from the Baptist Union. Many of the credible historians feel that actually what ended up killing him. He died of distress, the betrayal by close friends, the vote in his church, the feeling in his church was not unanimous. He faced that as well. Unfortunately, many of us know betrayal. Certainly, I don't think to the degree that Spurgeon did. But we need to be encouraged once in a while, to be inspired once in a while. And I think we can read chapter 11 and remember there were men who faced and women who faced a lot more difficult time than we did. The verse also reminds us that we will one day be standing before the judge, not if we won the race or not, but how faithfully we ran. There'll only be one winner in any race. He doesn't say you win because you won the race. You win because you were faithful in everything I asked you to do in that race. 1 Corinthians 3:10. According to the grace of God which was given unto me as a wise master builder, I laid the foundation that another buildeth thereon. Let every man take heed how he buildeth thereon. Soon we'll be standing before him, meeting Spurgeon, maybe walking down the golden road, Spurgeon comes up, say, hi, I was from England, where are you from? Yeah, how was it when you faced the enemy out there? How was it when you had to stand for truth? What did you endure? We never asked that. What me? So we need to be faithful in what we do. That key word. And we're warned. There will be obstacles. The IBFNA faced some pretty big obstacles to get where we are today. The verse says that there are going to be some weights that would encumber us from running faithfully, from being faithful. Weights that would distract us, hold us back, maybe even defeat us. When I was 30 when I went to Bible college. I had a family, 3 children of my own, foster child, loved football rapidly, watched it every chance I got. Even went to high school games, whether I knew the high school or not. Started Bible college full time, worked full time, tried to be with the family full time. Something had to give. Obviously, it was football. I went 3 years without watching a football game because it would have been a wait for me to watch my football game Monday night and whenever the weekends I had. I needed that time to study. I needed that time to be with family, which of course the you surrender. You didn't have to pray about it. A wait could be something good that's not evil. Be a good thing. We need to be careful as a fellowship that we don't allow some good things to take us away from our purpose, from the race that God sent before us. The IBFNA can be distracted easily, as with any organization. It can be, with just a few, encumbered with weights that could cost us. We need to know what our mission statement is and not vary from that. There are a lot of needs out there. We got to remember what God called us to do as a fellowship and be careful that we don't take a rabbit trail off of that. It then speaks of the sin. The article is there. It is the sin that so easily encumbers us. The verse itself actually is speaking to individuals, not an organization, and warning, I think, of the sin of unbelief, of doubt, of compromise, of stepping away from the rules of the race. To modify that for the organization, because we had a problem, 2 of them. Unfortunately, I was at the center of both. I was tasked with writing an article for the fellowship fairly early on. I don't remember what for, but it wasn't a resolution, and that had some article. So I dashed one off and wrote it, and in it, I mentioned that I thought the IBFNA was a moderately Calvinistic organization. Unfortunately, I did not elaborate on that. I just made that statement and then moved on. A costly mistake. Chuck Deere came to me after a bit and he said, "No." He said, "I'm not on that article you wrote, he says, you have ruffled some pretty fine feathers. People are murmuring, you know, that rolling thunder. They saw that term Calvinistic and they went bananas. Of course, nobody came to me to ask for an explanation. However, we had Calvinists in the group who did hear that rolling thunder and who were bothered deeply. Good friends with Jack Keat. Jack was one of the most active, earliest planners and encouragers, bringing several of us to join with us as we moved toward the IBFNA. I called him and said, Jack, how's it going? He said, well, not so well. Because I had heard that he had planned to no longer come to the IBFNA. And so I asked him, okay, why? He said, look, he said, I left the JRBC because as a strong Calvinist, they thought that I was quasi-heretical, if not fully heretical, treated as a second-class citizen because of my Calvinism. Said, I don't want to go back into that fight again, and it's obvious that I'm going to have to do that with the IBFNA because of what everybody's saying. Said, Jack, no, he said, too late. We lost about maybe a couple dozen men. They, with Jack, just said, they don't want us. No sense going. And they walked away. Now, 24 men out of, we had 300, 350. Wasn't a huge hit on fellowship, other than we lost some very good men. So that's sin number one. Sin number two was much more serious. Again, I was in the middle of it. The second issue came to a head when the conference was held in Detroit. I forget the year.
1994.
94. I was tasked as the resolutions chairman and asked personally to write a resolution reaffirming the fellowship's position on Bible versions. There had been some minor rumbling, and they thought maybe just to remind people that the doctrinal statement is about as balanced as you can get on that, with both sides. I wrote what I thought was a very balanced position on the issue, quoting several items directly from the Articles of Faith. After presenting it to the assembled group, and I probably wasn't in the best condition to do that. I had severe food poisoning on the way. I got out of bed just to read the resolutions and went back to bed. But I thought I did a fair job, and afterward many said they thought so too. But after presenting it to the assembled group, several asked for some minor editorial changes like we did here with add a word with a paragraph. Usually I disagree. The standard practice is if we'll take that, put that in, didn't bother with amendments and that kind of thing. There were a couple of those, wasn't a whole lot. But then all of a sudden one man got up and said, made a motion that he wanted to change the wording in the resolution, downplaying the usage of the King James and elevating the tendency toward the more modern translations. There was another who then stood up immediately and seconded the motion. I was asked if I would accept those changes. The changes they made were the changes that I had quoted from our doctrinal statement. And I said, no, I would not. Clay Metal was the moderator. I threw him under the bus because he had to moderate the discussion, the questions. And pretty soon it devolved into each side planting their feet and saying it's going to be this way. and the other side saying, let's not change it. A vote was taken 3 times. It was divided that equally. Finally, I think they just got tired, and it passed on the 4th vote. And the pass was to change the wording. And change the wording. I remember clearly walking off the platform wondering, did I just kill the IBFNA? That would be discussed. The answer to that was probably. The next meeting was held at Kansas City. The attendance ran about 100 to 125. Now, afterward, I did not attend that. Afterward, we were talking, Chuck and I, we were hoping that part of the problem was the location. We're not real strong out in the Midwest. Most of our people are from the East, and that's a long way to travel. Maybe that's what cut down the attendance. No, it wasn't. The following year, the attendance was still down to 100 or a little less. We lost all of our King James guys. They felt that they were being ridiculed and excluded. There were not many King James only guys included in that, maybe 4 or 5 at the most. But the King James guys said, clearly we're going to end up having a battle after all. I don't need that, and they didn't come back. That's a big hit. Frankly, the IBFNA has not recovered from that now. So going forward, I'm not around anymore to cause those problems, so we cannot survive that again. We thought we had harmony built into the doctrinal statement covering basis for everybody, and obviously it did not work out that way. So running the race faithfully, be careful of the sin of disrupting the harmony that is here, of realizing we're still a fairly eclectic group. We differ on some issues, and particularly issues where I think good and godly men can disagree. And I think both Calvinism and the versions, I think having a division over those is inexcusable. Good men are going to disagree. I don't expect you to believe what I believe. I'm not going to make an issue of it. I know my belief, as talked about my conviction, not yours. We need to be careful of that. We start pushing our own agenda, we're going to see what happens. We're going to be, instead of 350, we're going to be fortunate to have 50. So when I say that we need to be careful to run faithfully in the present, this verse reminds us there are dangers out there that we've had to endure, and it hurt us. We got other problems out there. The IBFNA, like all organizations, not just us, unless you're the Gospel Coalition, and they're struggling now. These young men coming up, coming out of college, seminary, they don't want to join anybody. They look around, they see the organizations, they disagree with this and with that and the other things, and they see some of the fighting, some of the just corruption that's going on there. I don't need that. I've talked to several, and that's the answer I get. I can get everything I need here in my local church. I got enough problems of my own. I don't need it from an organization that really can't do a whole lot for me. They don't see it. They stand alone. not dealing with the problems that are inherent in any organization. They don't see the need, which is unfortunate. Um, I use the illustration that the Allies were losing the war, the Second World War, because they could not supply Europe because the merchant marines ships were being sunk by the very effective Nazi U-boats until they came up with the convoy system, and that saved Europe. They were able to get the supplies and the men from the United States to Europe, and eventually then, the end of the story. So we've got some advertising to do, some teaching to do. These guys aren't getting it in their colleges, they're not getting it in their seminaries. Several of the fundamental schools that have survived aren't teaching anything about Baptist distinctives or dispensationalism. It's another one that is killing us. That's up to us. I think we need to do a little soul winning with fellow pastors and letting them know clearly and forcefully why we exist, why we are a benefit for them, why it is worth having to spend the extra money, the extra time away from church, the efforts with coordinating with others, or we'll continue to be small. Now, if that's what the Lord has, I don't have a problem with that. I was a church planter my first 15 years of ministry, lived and worked small groups. There were times when I preached to my wife and children. And we'll let God determine that. He gives we plant, we water, He gives the increase. And if this is where we need to be, that's fine. It's always the committed minority that carries the day anyway. Again, the key is not worried about winning the race. We don't have to be the biggest, but we have to be the most faithful. And so we need to be careful. We also need to know who we are. If I asked you right now to give me a 2-sentence mission statement for what the IBF is, could you do it? Short, crisp, clear, detailed, why people ought to be here, why fundamental Baptist pastors ought to take the time, ought to spend the money, ought to expend the effort. Why? What do you offer? I don't see anybody in here that has a TV program nationwide, or other than maybe one, right? Books that everybody clamors for. They're not going to get it that way. We need to have a presence in the community if we're going to try to reach the men. How that's going to happen, that's up to you. Obviously, we have failed to this point. So, I joked with Chick coming here that we talked about remembering fondly the past. Well, we're remembering unfondly some of the past too. But hopefully we can learn from our mistakes or my mistakes. I confess I was in the middle of both. So we have to decide. I will be talking tomorrow on the one essential part of the IBFNA that we can never surrender no matter what, that we absolutely have to have. But that's for tomorrow. Many of you know Jerry Weber. Jerry was a missionary to New Zealand, and he was an administration at Baptist, the the mission agency,
Baptist men.
Baptist Missions Agency. Retired from there and took over the directorship of Continental Baptist Mission for many years, which is where I met him, of course. And he's now in the village. He was pastoring down there for 8, 10 years, was the village administrator for 5 years. Now he's in an assisted living facility because of a couple of strokes and a wife that needs special care. But he wrote an article, and we have a little village-wide paper that goes out called The Trumpet. And they asked him to have the lead article in that for this issue that just came out this summer. I'll give you a couple paragraphs of his lead in to the article. And the article is entitled "To Know Thyself." I quote him here from the article. He writes, the quote, "Know thyself," has most often been attributed to the Greek philosopher Socrates. He did say it, but in truth it antedates him, having been inscribed in Latin on the forecourt of the temple of Apollo at Delphi. In context, Socrates said, "Know thyself, for once we know ourselves, we may learn how to care for ourselves." He goes on, without buying into Socratic philosophy, this much is true. If you don't know yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your abilities, your deficiencies, your affections, your aversions, it's difficult to know where you fit in the world around you. The result is you fly by the seat of your pants. This is true of institutions as well as individuals. If an entity or organization does not have a clear picture of what it is, why it exists, who it serves, it will flounder and fail to achieve its potential for good, and as a ministry, fail in its ministry for God. And he goes on and talks further. I think a good topic for some coming meetings might be who we are. Take the time to thresh out. I'm not even sure anymore if we've got a mission statement we use. You'll have to inform me. I tried to look at some of the literature and didn't see it. I think we need it. We need to be able to say why people ought to join us. I think IBFNA needs to be here. I think we are unique in our approach. The voices for fundamentalism in the culture dying. The fewer and fewer of them. Pastor, where do you send your kid to college? If you want to have a fundamental Baptist child graduate from that college, how many out there? I'm becoming convicted of the need to go back to the journeyman approach. Take one of your leading men you think might be suitable and bring him into your office. You teach him. Now, I know not everybody's going to be able to do that. I know there's all kinds of complications, but I think that's what we're going to have to do if we're going to strive as a fundamental group or as a fundamental Baptist movement. I'm not getting it anyplace else. So, may the IBFNA be that voice for fundamentalism, even as we're small. We can still speak. We need to be that refuge for the worry warrior. There are a lot of men out there, not just us, who are hurting and don't know where to turn. We can say, that's why we're here. We're part of the support group for you. Come and be with men who believe the way you believe, who have your philosophy, who will support you, be praying and doing more than just talking about it. We need to let people know that. Paul admonished Timothy, 2 Timothy 2:1, when he faced similar problems at the church there, that was, Paul said, "Be thou therefore my son, strong in the grace that is in Christ Jesus." Remembering the past with its victories and its failings, learn from the mistakes, move forward, and see the grace of God uphold us, bless us, and use us. It will be worth it all. And we see Jesus. Let's pray. Father, been kind of a downer, but it's things that we need to remember. We've got an enemy who is powerful, who cannot defeat us unless we allow it. So, Father, we'd ask that you would guide us, help us to grow strong in the grace and in the might that is our God. Help us be that organization that people look at and say, I need to belong to that group. They believe what I believe. And I want to stand for truth with them. Father, may we be that man. Guide us now. Grateful for the way you fed our souls already. We look forward to that in the future. Bless, we pray.